In this video, I'm gonna rank every single loot island in Fortnite history from worst to best. Yeah, you know that big island that just spawns in like halfway through the game? That is what we are ranking today. These islands are mainly being ranked based on their loot, not so much, by their design or their aesthetics or how they look. So the chances are, if a certain loot island gives you, a not so great mythic item or no mythics at all, it'll probably be at the bottom of this list. All right, just a very quick editor's note from Tyler in the future here. You will hear me throughout this video refer to particularly the Chapter 5 loot islands as not dropping any mythics, but you'll see in the gameplay they do drop mythics. Well, that's because I'm referring to they don't drop any loot island exclusive mythics, which is one of the main reasons why you go to loot island in the first place. You'll see for Chapter 5 Season 4, it'll drop War Machine's Arsenal, or in Chapter 5 Season 2, you'll notice it'll drop some of the Avatar mythics. When I say they don't drop any mythics, they do drop mythics, I just mean they don't drop any loot island exclusive mythics. If you go on to enjoy this video, please do be sure to leave this video a like, hit that subscribe button if you could. We are pushing for 100,000 subscribers, and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop when you make your next purchase. But with all that out of the way, let's finally get into the ranking. All right, so at our number 12 spot, in my opinion, the worst loot island in Fortnite history comes from Chapter 5 Season 3. And no, I'm not talking about the Metallica loot island. I'll get there in a little bit. I'm talking about the base loot island that would spawn in before and after that collaboration happened. For all intents and purposes, it's just really not great. For the most part, you just get a bunch of epic items from the capture flag, which takes like 40 something seconds to capture. No mythics, no legendary slurp juices. Most of the time, honestly, no legendaries at all. It would just drop purple items. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the Chapter 5 Season 3 loot island. I also think the loot pool in Chapter 5 Season 3 was pretty weak for the most part, and so you guys will see why that matters when I talk about the next couple loot islands. At number 11 is Chapter 5 Season 2's loot island, and yes, this loot island is the exact same thing as the Chapter 5 Season 3 loot island. The only reason why I put this one ahead of it is because of the Gatekeeper shotgun. Most of the time, if you didn't have a Gatekeeper and you went to loot island, the capture flag would almost always give you a Gatekeeper. That is obviously, a very good thing, and I just genuinely believe the weapons in Chapter 5 Season 2 that you could get from the loot island were better than the ones from Chapter 5 Season 3, but again, very weak. No mythics, no really anything, just kind of mid loot. And following that up at the number 10 spot is the Chapter 5 Season 1 loot island. You guys see a trend here, right? No mythics, barely any legendaries. It's just very hard for me to put these versions of loot island any higher, especially when you're going against versions that give you 2, even 3 mythics sometimes. But what I will say is the Chapter 5 Season 1 loot pool, I feel like, was the strongest, or at least the weapons in that loot pool were the strongest as compared to Season 2 and Season 3. And so that's why I feel like this version of loot island is better than the ones that I just talked about. But still really nothing crazy. I mean, for these last 3 loot islands, I think you could even try and make the argument that it's really almost not even worth going for it. And at the number 9 spot is the Crackshot Cabins loot island from Chapter 5 Season 1. So it's exactly the same, like, loot-wise. I mean, you might have, an extra chest or 2, but you still have the same capture point that's going to drop you a bunch of epic items, some shield, all that good stuff. And I know at the beginning of this video, I said they're mainly being ranked based on their loot, but still I am taking into consideration a little bit the design, and I honestly just feel like the Crackshot Cabin loot island just looks so much cooler, especially when you have like the little ice skating area underneath like the middle of the island. You have the other floating islands as part of it. I get good vibes from this loot island, but loot-wise, it is almost identical to the, last 3 that I just named. So don't really look too deep into this pick. At number 8 is the loot island from Chapter 5 Season 4. I know I kind of sound like a broken record here, but it's the same as the Season 1, 2, and 3 loot islands, except now this one would drop War Machine's hover jets like 90% of the time from that capture flag, and obviously, you guys will keep hearing me mention the capture flag. Let's all be honest, that is the main reason you're going to loot island anyways, especially when I talk about some of the other islands higher up on this list that will give, mythics and legendaries. Yeah, that's why you're going to loot island, to get those items that can only be retrieved on the entire island from capturing that flag point. But while the Chapter 5 Season 4 loot island did not drop a mythic, it would almost always, as I just mentioned, drop War Machine's hover jets. And so at this point in the game, if you did not already have the hover jets, you come to loot island, you can almost always guarantee yourself that you're going to find one. And in a season where, the hover jets were such a crutch, so important, you had to have them, being able to almost always guarantee yourself one, yeah, that's huge. Not to mention, the Gatekeeper shotgun, Shory's claws, these are all items that could could be dropped from the flag point. And yeah, overall, you know, pretty solid loot island, but nowhere even close to the best. Moving on to number 7, we're going back to Chapter 4 in Chapter 4 Season 4, because that version of Loot Island, the Chapter 4 Season 4 version, is where things start to turn around. Now you are guaranteeing a mythic weapon and slurp juices. Now, what I will say, was the enhanced infiltrator pump shotgun really that good? I mean, I'm just not the biggest fan of the infiltrator. I think it's decent, and obviously a mythic shotgun, you're almost always gonna take it. The slurp juices, though, especially are the real thing you're gunning for. You guys gotta remember, to my knowledge, and I know I could be wrong here, but to my knowledge, the only way you could get legendary slurp juices were from Loot Island, or the supply caches around the map. So these things were few and far between, and so to be able to guarantee yourself some, yeah, I mean, that's got to be a big bonus, and it is. While the enhanced infiltrator pump shotgun is probably the weakest mythic that Loot Island has ever dropped, in my opinion, that doesn't mean that Chapter 4 Season 4's island is bad at all, and especially the slurp juices help it out a ton. At number 6, I've got Chapter 5 Season 3's Loot Island, but specifically the Metallica collab island. I really love when they integrate, you know, collaborations into the islands and make it super unique. You actually had to emote instead of just, you know, like standing there and capturing the point. You actually had to do an emote that would make the bar tick all the way up to full, and then once you did that, it would drop the conductor hand cannon, that's the mythic deagle, a bunch of legendaries, and multiple ride the lightning mythics. I mean, that's some serious stuff. Multiple mythics and legendaries. Now you're starting to get into the top tier of Loot Islands, and the only reason why it's ahead of the Chapter 4 Season 4 version is because I feel like the mythic deagle wasn't that useful. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't really hunting for the conductor hand cannon. Like, I wasn't going out of my way to go to this Loot Island to get the hand cannon. And while the ride the lightning item is very solid, it's not like it could only be found at the Loot Island. You could find it around the map, and so if you had ride the lightning already and you didn't really care about the mythic deagle like me, you wouldn't really go out of your way to go to this Loot Island. With that being said, though, this is still a very solid version. You're always going to use some sort of the legendaries that they give you. Moving on to number 5, I've got Chapter 4 Season 3's Loot Island. That is going to drop you the mythic enhanced drum shotgun. It'll also give you a slurp juice, and I guess I should mention now with the Chapter 4 Loot Islands, if you used hollow keys, you could also open a vault kind of like underneath the island. So I guess just kind of keep that in the back of your head. And also, in case you didn't know, for all the Chapter 4 Loot Islands, they all come with a slurp juice and a mythic item. So I'm really just ranking the Chapter 4 ones in my head based on which mythic item you get is better. And the enhanced drum shotgun is nothing to scoffle about. This thing is an absolute bulldozer. At close range, it'll just run over people, but when you aim down sights, you get that super tight pellet spread. It'll absolutely delete people. Even at like mid ranges for a shotgun, this thing is incredible. You're always going to love that slurp juice that they're going to give you. Overall, I don't really have anything bad to say about this Loot Island. It's a very solid one. Any of these Chapter 4 islands that are going to guarantee you give you a slurp juice, you're going to go to them all the time. And that's what makes some of these better than the Chapter 5 ones, is the incentive to actually go to the Loot Island. But all right, moving on to our number 4 spot is actually the most recent entry on this list from Chapter 6 Season 2. It is Shogun's Arena. Yes, this is Chapter 6 version of Loot Island, and I should probably put that in like a plural because there's multiple floating islands, and this time you don't just have to sit there and capture the point. As you guys probably know, you have to actually fight Shogun X, fight that boss, and then you're rewarded with a bunch of stuff. So for Season 2's version, you get the enhanced Hollow Twister AR, you get the Super Shield Medallion, which spawns a Shield Bubble Jr. when you heal yourself, and then drops you just a regular Chug Jug. I don't really have to say anything about the Mythic Hollow Twister. We all know how good it is. It is one of the best assault rifles of all time. Nothing else really needs to be said there. The Super Shield Medallion is a really interesting one. You can tell that this is a medallion that in zero build is going to absolutely be dominant, is going to carry you, but I don't play zero build, and so maybe you can see where I'm coming from, right? If I played zero build, this would maybe be at the number 2 spot, honestly. But popping a shield bubble over your head when you heal in build mode, that doesn't really do anything for me. I can just build a 1x1 around myself when I get shot. And the new version of the Chug Jug is very, very good. Being able to, you know, take the heals whenever you want, put it down, and just do that whenever you want kind of acts like a better version of Flowberry Fizz. Yeah, the Chug Jug is very good. Overall, you know, this is a loot island that is definitely worth going for as long as you have the firepower to take down its boss. At my number 3 spot today, guys, is our last Chapter 4 loot island. It's Chapter 4 Season 2's version. That's going to drop you an overclock pulse rifle and a slurp juice. And I think there's definitely an argument to be had for this being maybe behind Shogun's Arena, the one that I just talked about from Chapter 6 Season 2. But I think the legendary slurp juice is better than the chug jug. I honestly do think the overclock pulse rifle is better than the mythic hollow twister AR. And as a build player, I don't really use the super shield medallion that often, so maybe using that reasoning, you guys can kind of see where I'm coming from here. I don't know what else to say about the overclock pulse rifle that I already haven't said in so many videos before. In my opinion, it is a top 3 assault rifle of all time, maybe even the best assault rifle of all time. You could 100% make that argument. This thing's an absolute beast, and in a meta that you can pair it with, you know, a kinetic blade, a havoc pump shotgun, get that slurp juice in there, an overclock pulse rifle, you are just literally a super soldier. You are untouchable. There are few weapons in Fortnite history that are able to just strike fear in you like the overclock pulse rifle, and yeah, that's the reason why it's inside the top 3. But now we are into the serious heavy hitters here, and at the number 2 spot is Shogun's Arena from Chapter 6 Season 1. Once defeated, Shogun X will drop his Shogun X medallion, which gives you infinite stamina and cloak while sprinting. I'll get back to that. The mythic Typhoon Blade and Shogun X's Fire Oni mask. So yeah, 2 mythics. That is some serious damage we're talking about here. But what I will say is the Fire Oni mask, I don't really care about that. I don't think a lot of people did. I honestly would just leave it behind. The mythic Typhoon Blade though, yeah, I'm not leaving that behind. I am taking that every single time. I don't have to really explain to you guys the strength of the Typhoon Blade. I know you guys are starting to see it with the kneecapper in Season 2, how annoying it can be. Well, if you played Season 1, you know the Typhoon Blade was even worse in terms of how good it was. I mean, this thing was an absolute beast. And the Shogun X medallion is incredible. It might actually be the best thing that you get from this. I mean, try fighting somebody with this medallion. Infinite stamina on its own is fantastic. That could just be its own medallion. But then you add in the fact that you fully cloak while sprinting. I mean, that's what made the cloaking items so bad in previous Fortnite seasons, was that you couldn't sprint with them. You were just kind of like slow walking or crouching, and then once you didn't do that, it would uncloak. This medallion changed that, made it absolutely insane. You're basically invisible anytime you are running, and it's up there in my opinion for one of the best medallions of all time. But every single loot island on this list is beaten out by our number 1 spot today. At that number 1 spot, guys, it is the Isle of Doom from Chapter 5 Season 4, which would give you 1 item, that being the Armor of Doom. Now, as soon as you saw the title for this video, you probably already assumed this would be at the number 1 spot. So, you know what? I hate when a video like this has an obvious ending, but what else am I supposed to do? I can't just not include it. It is absolutely a version of Loot Island. It is meant to be absolutely broken. Armor of Doom may be the strongest item that has ever been in a Fortnite season. That shouldn't be a surprise. If you ever played against this guy, it's like you either just go for Armor of Doom or you lose the game. At least that's how my buddies and I treated it. It was like as soon as we saw the Isle of Doom popped up, it was like we gotta go, because if we don't get it, we're just gonna lose the game anyway. So let's just go. And there are some absolutely unreal fights that would happen on the Isle of Doom. It reminded me of like the OG Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet back in the day. And you know what? I actually think the Armor of Doom is better than Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet. Let me know what you guys think of that in the comment section down below. But yeah, easy number 1 spot here. I don't have to do any more explaining. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. I have seen this video idea commented so many times over and over again, and you guys know me. If I see enough comments for something, I will absolutely make that video 10 out of 10 times. So thanks again for commenting video ideas. Let me know in the comment section of this video what you'd like to see next, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.